They attempted to gauge whether or not a so-called commando raid would be plausible, and this was a collective effort.
At the same time, the Canadian government in Ottawa provided bogus passports for the 6 American house guests. The other vital documents, such as false driver's licenses, came from the provincial governments of Ontario and Alberta. Then, at the CIA's headquarters in Langley, Virginia, 6 Canadian passports were doctored with the necessary stamps, visas, and photos of the 6 Americans. The passports arrived at Mehrabad Airport by diplomatic courier. Canadian First Secretary Roger Lucey, who understood Farsi, inspected the passports for errors. There was a mistake.
There was one date had inadvertently been set ahead.
The CIA had mistaken the date that the 6 Americans were meant to have arrived in Tehran. The date they had forged showed the 6 leaving Iran before they had arrived. This error was rectified by a CIA agent whom Jimmy Carter had sent to Iran to assist in the Canadian caper.
We were given background information on Canada because unfortunately we're quite illiterate to our next door neighbor to the north.
Learning to say A and eating with our left hand.
I had to find out that it was actually Toronto, Canada instead of Toronto, Canada.
Tirana like piranha.
A.
All of us were part of a group of Canadian business venture and checking out the situation in Iran. That's why we're there.
We were given our new names and dates of birth and that kind of stuff and asked to start learning who we were going to be.
By January 27th, nearly all the Canadian embassy staff, including John and Zena Sheardown and Ken Taylor's wife Pat, had left Tehran supposedly on holiday. It had been decided that the escape from Iran was to take place on January 28th during the Iranian elections.
The Americans made their way to the airport in our office cars as friends of mine.
You know, when you're sitting there in the car and it's dark and you're just driving it, I began to imagine all sorts of terrible things that were going to happen when we got there.
I was wearing dark glasses. I think I used a little eyebrow pencil to darken up my eyebrows. I combed my hair in a little different way. And the girls changed their hairdos.
To walk into a crowded airport lobby was very scary. It felt very strange. But after we stood there for a minute or so, then it was okay. But that made me very nervous.
Normally, the man stood there, took your passport, stamped it, and you were on your way. That particular morning, there, for some reason, was a change. He took my passport, looked at it, and stepped into a side room.
3 long minutes later, he returned.
And he looked at me and in broken English said, "Is this you?" And it was a very stern picture, no smile. And that morning I was trying to be as cheerful as I really could when I was talking to any of the officials. And I got a very stern look on my face and pulled down my mustache and said, "Yes." And he kind of smiled, and then I smiled, and he handed me my passport. And on I went.
That's the point where you really begin anticipating, and when you're so close, but yet there are still a few more vital things to do. And going on board and sitting down was, you know, just that much closer. And mentally, I think we were counting now to minutes. And fortunately, once we were on board, takeoff was almost immediate.
Lee and I both leaned out in the aisle and looked at each other with a kind of a knowing look and smile on our face, and we were really very happy.
Sooner or later, here or anywhere in the world, Canada will pay for this violation of the sovereignty of Iran.